Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to never miss any update from Rouse IAS Study Circle. Join the only official Telegram channel of Rouse IAS Study Circle to get the relevant materials and important updates. Hello and welcome to the Daily News Simplified. The what, why and how of the newspaper analysis from the Civil Services Examinations perspective. So today we are going to discuss the Hindu Delhi edition dated 5th March 2022. The topics to be discussed have been displayed on your screen and the timestamping of the same has been provided in the description box below. Now this topic is from the editorial section. The topic reads Capital Verdict. And the context of this topic is that recently High Court has come up with a verdict with reference to the constitution of the capital of Amravati of the state of Andhra Pradesh. Now the context of this very topic is very restricted in the sense from the UPSC perspective. However, in order to understand the relevant portion of this particular editorial from our examination's point of view, we need to understand the case in the brief also. But in whole this verdict, the important thing which we need to be aware for our examination perspective is the two doctrines. That is the doctrines of the promissory estoppel, that is constitutional trust, as well as the related doctrine of public trust. We shall look at these both doctrines. You need to be aware just about the basic details of these doctrines. No need to go deeper in it. You just need to be aware that what do you exactly mean by the doctrine of promissory estoppel as well as the doctrine of public trust. As far as the UPSC scheme of syllabus is concerned, this topic falls under the General Studies paper 2 in the structure, organization and functioning of the executive and judiciary. So now we shall look at brief about this case. Now we are all aware about the division of the state of Andhra Pradesh as well as Telangana. Now when the state of Telangana was created, the city of Hyderabad was designated as the capital of Telangana and the city of Amravati was designated as the capital of Andhra Pradesh. However, the state of Andhra Pradesh has to rebuild its own capital starting from the legislative, executive and judiciary ecosystem. So that is why the Andhra Pradesh started the developmental projects of the Amravati and for that it started to acquire the land. But with the change of the government in the state, the work of building the capital of Amravati got stopped. And the new government came up with the idea of decentralized development, whereby it imagined that we shall not go for a single capital. For example, in India, we have Delhi, and Delhi is the seat of judiciary also, because Supreme Court is in Delhi, and Delhi is the seat of the India's parliament also. So that means Delhi serves as the capital of judiciary, legislative as well as executive, and this is one of the major reasons for overcrowding of Delhi also. So learning from this, the government of Andhra Pradesh thought that why not to go for the decentralized development. And in this very line, it viewed three capitals in one state. It said that the legislative capital of the Andhra Pradesh will be in Amravati, the executive capital will be in Visakhapatnam, and the judiciary, the High Court, will be established in the Kurnool. So the idea was that in this sense, they will develop three poles in the state of Andhra Pradesh, that is Amravati, Visakhapatnam and Kurnool, and later on these three poles will develop independently, leading the way for the inclusive development. But again, the High Court has shown its resentment in this verdict and has said that when we know that around 33,000 acres of land have been given by farmers to the state and around 15,000 crores of the state's money is already been invested in developing the Amravati as the Andhra's capital, now the state cannot go back on its promise. And here is where two important doctrines come into play. The first is the doctrine of promissory estoppel and the second is the doctrine of public trust. Now as the name suggests, promise, the doctrine of promissory estoppel is oftenly invoked against the government and it says that once if the government has promised something to citizens and that promise is not in violation of the law of the land, later on the government cannot go back on its promise. It has to fulfill its promise. So in this very context, the High Court says that if the government has promised to develop Amravati as the state capital and in this lieu the government has acquired around 33,000 acres of land, now just with the change of the government, the new government cannot go back on the promise which was made by the earlier government. The second is the doctrine of public trust. Now, doctrine of public trust has originated from the Article 21 of the Indian Constitution, and it advocates for the efficient management of resources. It says that state, the government, is just the trustee of the people because we have surrendered some of our rights to the government, and the government is not the owner of citizens. Rather, the government is just the trustee of the citizens for which they perform certain functions, for example, formulating the laws and executing those laws. So the state is just a trustee, and that is why the real power lies in the hands of the citizens. And because the state is just a trustee, it is under bondation to efficiently utilize the resources. And if they are not managing effectively the resources of the land, then they are accountable to the citizens, and citizens can question the government that why are you not managing our resources properly, because they are just trustee. So this is the doctrine of public trust. Now, why we are discussing these two doctrines? Because of two reasons. First is that in last years UPSC has asked questions in mains related to certain doctrines. For example, in UPSC 2021 the question was asked on the doctrine of constitutional morality. And in UPSC 2020 the question was asked with reference to the doctrine of separation of powers. So first, the direct link is that there might be some question on doctrine of promissory estoppel or the doctrine of public trust, but we are not looking at just direct links. You can use these two doctrines if you know these basics. You can use these two doctrines in your essays, in your answers. You can substantiate your arguments. For example, if you are writing something on governance, you can very well write the doctrine of public trust in your answers related to governance. For example, if you are writing something on transparency or accountability, you can very well use this doctrine of public trust. Moreover, in prelim examinations, the question can be directly asked on the doctrine of promissory estoppel or doctrine of public trust. So the thing is that whenever you read some article or some piece in newspaper or magazines, always keep your eyes and minds clear that whatever information you are getting through it, can you use it in exam in some paper somewhere at some point of time? If yes, then that information becomes relevant for you. And you should be aware about at least the basics of these key terms which regularly appear in newspaper. So that was the idea behind that why we discussed the doctrine of promissory estoppel or the doctrine of public trust in this session. Now this is the lead article and has appeared in today's The Hindu edition at page number 8. Now this article is purely from the ethical perspective, voting in favor of the non-violence as a means to end all the evils. The context of this topic, as you can see here, is the Russo-Ukrainian War, and it says that the world must forego any attempt to place heroes of wars on higher pedestals than the apostles of non-violence. We shall discuss this line also in detail. However, this article is purely opinionated article, but it gives an important perspective which is relevant in your ethics GS paper 4. So that is why I have taken this article to be discussed in this session in order to have certain points in favor of non-violence and altogether a different perspective which we shall discuss in end. So let us start our discussion in detail. As I have already said that this is an opinionated article, and that is why this is the perspective of the author of this particular article. Now this article in certain section discusses the power of the non-violence with the prime reference of the Mahatma Gandhi. We all know that whenever such terms come into our mind, that is non-violence, truth, ahimsa, satyagraha, so all these things are somehow associated with Mahatma Gandhi. So in this very sense, this article points out to an important thing. It says that whenever we discuss and we talk about that, for example, Russia is invading Ukraine. Now, if you ask the Ukrainians to sit quiet and be peaceful and non-violent, can you think that the people can sit adopting the non-violent measures against the organized, powerful and brutal force? The first logical answer which comes to our mind is no. Because if someone is attacking you, and that is not just one particular person, that is one of the most powerful nations of the world, if they are attacking you brutally, blasting your sites, Blasting your sites, acquiring your nuclear power stations, acquiring everything, can we expect the people, the victims, to be purely non-violent? Now, this article does not give his answer directly, however, it says yes because it gives one important situation. It says that go back to the Mahatma Gandhi era, that was during the 1914 to 1948. Now, the author of this particular article says that this period was one of the most brutal period of the entire global history. This period has witnessed two great world wars. This period has also witnessed great economic depression. Now, this period has also witnessed several small battles which were going on across the world, the struggle against colonization and imperialism. So, this was one of the periods in the entire global history that was characterized by huge complexities, complications, confusions, as well as brutality. Even in this hyper negative period, a person called Mahatma Gandhi rises on his feet and he stands strong on the principle of non-violence. And he proves his principles of non-violence not only with the context of the India's freedom, but also in the context of the South African Boer Wars. That is why the author says that even in that particular time also there were voices against the principle of non-violence who were advocating that we should adopt the violent means to overthrow British rule. But even in that period, if it is somehow possible that person Mahatma Gandhi is standing strong with his principles of truth and non-violence, then why is it not practical in today's world? Provided the fact when we have all the organizations which have somehow broadly adopted the principles of non-violence. So, in this very regard, the author says that Mahatma Gandhi's principles were relevant not in India but also across the world. Moreover, the Mahatma Gandhi used the principle of non-violence not just against the external force, that is the British colonialism, but also to reform the internal evils of our Indian society. For example, you might be aware of the Mahatma Gandhi's constructive programs. Now, what are these constructive programs? These constructive programs were aimed at reforming the Indian society from within. For example, the caste based differences. So Mahatma Gandhi used the methods of non-violence not just to overthrow the British rule, but also to reform the caste system to improve, to increase the status of equality, to promote the equity, fraternity, and brotherhood within the Indian society. That means that the non-violence is a multi-dimensional aspect and it depends upon you that whether you can understand the power of this non-violence or not. The second thing this article says that the Mahatma Gandhi's principles of non-violence has motivated the countries across the world. For example, the US civil rights movements were based on the principles of non-violence. Anti-apartheid movement in Africa was based on the power of non-violence. And moreover, the anti-communist movements in the Europe were also supporting the non-violent principles. So the Gandhian principles have not just motivated India, but they have showed the ray of light and hope to almost all the regions across the globe. The second important dimension which this article points about favors is that the non-violence has a huge citizen support. The primary reason is that because the non-violence is inclusive in nature. Because just imagine that if you are going for some violent retaliations, the weaker section of the society, the marginalized sections, the vulnerable sections, for example, women, low caste, minorities, they might not be having such resources, such confidence that they can take to violent means. But when it comes to the non violent, it gains significance and it attracts the affirmative response from almost all the sections of society. That is why in almost all the regions of society, that whether it was US, Africa, India, Europe, non-violence has proved its worth. Further, an important thing is that non-violence leads to minimal disruption to the life. Why? Whenever we resort to the violent actions, the destruction is bound to happen. And that destruction will be twofold because one destruction is obviously organized by the attacker, But if the victims are also involved in non-violent activities, then the destruction will be twofold. So that is why the life will be completely disrupted. And the best example to this is that even after conducting the wars in Vietnam, the US government lost in their homeland because the citizens didn't support the US action. So the point is, when you will hit someone, that person will get hurt, obviously, but you will also get hurt. Okay, so that is why it says that the citizen support to the non-violent activities is far greater than the violent actions. Yes, while we are sitting in our drawing rooms or we are having some debates and discussion in some coffee shops, we can promote and favor the fact that why we are not mobilizing our army or we get highly charged. But when we have to be part of that particular army which is going to attack, just imagine the pain which our family back home will face. So again, the point is that if you have to only speak, then you can favor the violent action or retaliation. But if you have to act, then the non-violence is the most commonly accepted way of life. And this has been proven multiple times. Further, this article also proves the relevance of the non-violence in this aspect that the non-violence promotes the stable future. The example which is used by this author to substantiate this claim is that the Indian relations in the post-independent era was built on the principles of non-violence. For example, non-aligned movement. India and several developing countries were against aligning to some particular military bloc, and they chose the principle of non-violence and truth, and that in continuation with it, the non-alignment to any bloc. So the point is that again, the principles of the non-violence led to the stable future for India also in international relations as well as in domestic sense too. But now comes the second important aspect of this particular article, which we have already touched in our this discussion. This article says that there is a common mentality. The common mentality is that we are in a mindset to celebrate the wars. Even if we lose some war, we see that particular incident as an act of bravery. So the point is that we are in a continuous mindset of celebrating the heroes of the wars. So therefore the mindset is that we always hold the heroes of the wars with very high respect, and somehow the apostles of non-violence are considered as weak. Now this particular dimension is very important. You yourself think, you yourself introspect that are we the educated people not into this mindset? Yes, we are. The point is that you don't have to disrespect the heroes of the wars. The point is that do you respect the apostles of non-violence at the same level? Do you hold the respect of these people at the same level with the heroes of the wars? So this is a question which this article has asked you, and you have to introspect yourself about this. Now this particular topic has appeared in today's The Hindu edition at page number 4. Though the context of this topic is very localized in nature with respect to the state of Maharashtra, which is not very much relevant from the UPSC examinations perspective. However, the context, the core theme of this context is very important, which is in relation to the appointment of the assembly speaker. As one of the organization has requested the governor Bhagat Singh Koshyari in order to announce the dates for the election of the assembly speaker. So in this very regard, we should be aware about all the constitutional provisions which deal with the appointment and removal of the speaker as well as the deputy speaker of the legislative assemblies. As far as the UPSC syllabus is concerned, this topic falls directly under the General Studies Paper 2 in the section of the Constitution and the micro section of the structure, organization and functioning of the executive. So in this very regard, we shall take our discussion forward and shall look at multiple provisions of the Indian Constitution, article by article detailing of the appointment, removal and some of the powers of the Speaker as well as Deputy Speaker of the assemblies. So primarily there are four articles, that is Article 178, 179, 180 and 181, which deal with the appointment as well as removal of the Speaker as well as the Deputy Speaker of the legislative assemblies. Article 178 deals with the appointment of the speaker as a deputy speaker, and it says that once the assembly is selected, that assembly will choose two members out of that very assembly to become the speaker as well as the deputy speaker. This means that speaker and deputy speaker are chosen by the members of the state assembly themselves. Now, Article 179 is in relation to the removal of the speaker as well as deputy speaker. It says that the speaker or the deputy speaker shall vacate his or her office if he or she ceases to be the member of the assembly. The basic logic is that because the speaker and deputy speaker was the member of the assembly who were selected, who were chosen by the assembly themselves, so if they cease to be the member of that very assembly, that means that they shall vacate the office. The second point is that the resignation is to be submitted to the each other. That means that if the speaker wants to resign, he shall submit his resignation to the deputy speaker, and if the deputy speaker has to resign, he shall submit his resignation to the speaker. Further, if they have to be removed by the assembly members, then that resolution should be passed by all the then members of the assembly. It means that all the then members of the assembly shall pass the resolution with the simple majority, that is more than 50%, in order to remove the speaker or the deputy speaker as the case may be. However, there are two sub-conditions which are attached with this removal procedure. First is that the speaker or the deputy speaker, whosoever's resolution is in motion, he or she must be served at least 14-day notice. And the second thing is that the speaker or deputy speaker shall continue his office immediately before the first session of the next assembly. Now we shall come to the Article 180. Article 180 talks about the situations which can arise out of temporary vacancy or the temporary absence. Now here, if you will closely look at the article in your Bare Act, you will see that there is slight difference of conditions between the vacancy as well as the situation when the speaker or deputy speaker is absent. That means that if we say that the office is vacant, it means that we do not have speaker or deputy speaker. But if we say that office is absent, that means we have the speaker and deputy speaker, but due to some reasons he is absent from the house, he is absent from the office. So in both these situations, the course of actions become different. For example, during the vacancy, if there is no speaker, all the functions are to be performed by the deputy speaker of the house. Further, if there is no deputy speaker as well, there is no speaker as well as there is no deputy speaker, then some other member is to be chosen from the assembly and he is to be appointed by the governor. Similarly, if the office of the speaker is absent, then the functions are performed by deputy speaker. However, if the speaker as well as deputy speaker both are absent, then as the rules of the procedure of that particular house says. Now this is very important because the rules of the procedure of different states may vary. And in this continuation we shall discuss the Article 181. The Article 181 says that whenever the resolution for the removal of the speaker or deputy speaker is in motion, at that particular time the speaker or the deputy speaker shall not preside his office, which means that he will not act as speaker or the deputy speaker during the period when the resolution for his removal is in motion. However, he shall act as a normal member of the house, and therefore he, that is the speaker or the deputy speaker, shall have the right to speak and also right to vote in first instance. Now this word is very important. Now what happens is, let us suppose that there is a house whereby we have 200 members including the speaker. Now what happens is that suppose in some matter there is voting going on and then we have 100 versus 100 votes. That means we have a situation of equality of votes. So during this situation, the speaker, or if the speaker is not there, then the deputy speaker, now he can vote either in the favor of these people or in the favor of these people. However, that will be the final voting. But when the resolution for the removal is in motion, that final voting power is not given to the speaker. He shall vote in the first instance. That is when the simple voting is going on. That is when all the members were voting. At that particular time, the speaker can also vote. However, if the situation of equality of votes arises, he shall not have the right to vote. So these are the constitutional provisions which deal with the appointment, removal and certain powers of the speaker as well as deputy speaker of the state legislative assemblies. Now this topic is very important because we all know that several questions directly from the constitutional articles come under prelims paper. Now this topic has appeared on page number 2 in the context of CBI. So this topic has already been covered in the DNS dated 2nd December 2021 by Baswa sir. Sir has already covered all the major dimensions associated with the CBI which is relevant for you people from the mains perspective. For example, the sir has discussed the establishment of the CBI, types of crime associated, appointment of the CBI director, issues and the reforms needed. So that means if you go back to the DNS dated 2nd December 2021, you will be aware about all the multiple dimensions associated with the CBI, its issues as well as reforms. Similarly, at page number 14, the topic has appeared in relation to the Data Protection Bill. Now again, this topic has already been covered in the DNS dated 30th September 2021, whereby Faizan sir has covered in detail the Data Protection Bill and the associated issues. Sir has covered the brief history of the bill in relation to the case Puttaswamy versus Union of India judgment, as well as all the major issues which are associated with the deliberations over this bill. So that is why you are requested to go back to the DNS dated 30th September 2021 in order to holistically understand this particular topic. So now is the time for the question of the day. The question from the yesterday's DNS dated 4th March 2022 was in relation to the NPT treaty. The question asked you to find out the correct statements about the NPT treaty. Statement 1 said that the nuclear weapon states as those that had manufactured and detonated a nuclear explosive device prior to 1 January 1967. Statement 2 said to accede to the NPT, a country has to dismantle its nuclear weapons. So the correct answer to this particular question is option C because both the statements are correct. The question from today's DNS is in relation to the speaker and deputy speaker. The question asked, consider the following statements in accordance with the Constitution of India. There are two statements and you have to find the correct statements out of the given two statements. The statement 1 says, the ruling political party can choose any two of its members to become the speaker and deputy speaker irrespective of their winning or losing in the assembly elections. The statement 2 says that the speaker and deputy speaker shall be removed by the resolution approved by a special majority in the legislative assembly. So that's all for today. All the very best and study hard.